All right, let me check this quickly. And there we go. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world. Today is Tuesday, and it's another episode of the Truth Runners Talk Show, where I have the great pleasure to have a wonderful guest. Her name is Louie Bischoff, and she's joining us from Arizona. Welcome, Louie, and thank you so much for joining me today.
It's so wonderful to be here. Yes. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening to everyone. It is a joy to be here, and I really, truly appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to spend time with you and to be able to spend time with your viewers and listeners, and hopefully be able to share some of my experience and my strength and my hope with them as well.
I'm sure you will, Louie. And Louie is the first timer on Truth Runners. So if you allow me, guys, I'm going to introduce her to you, English, third language. So here we go. Louie is the founder of the Sober Relationship Blueprint, and that's something I would really love to talk about today. So she's the founder of the Sober Relationship Blueprint, online relationship coaching that helps people who are sober from drugs, alcohol, food, gambling, sex addiction, etc., learn to build healthy, mature, sober love relationships. Love that. In July 2012, Louie realized that alcohol was ruining her life and that she was neglecting her kids, then 8 and 10 years old. In July 2012, Louie walked into the 12-step rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and began her journey of sobriety and self-discovery. This is where she created the initial framework of what is now the Sober Relationship Blueprint. Since 2010, when her marriage ended, Louie has actively been learned how to sober date and how to have healthy, mature, sober relationships with all people. Today, Louie is an entrepreneur and a great mother to her young adult sons, and by applying what she created with her copyrighted content in the Sober Relationship Blueprint to her own life, she has helped dozens of people build sober dating plans and find success in their romantic relationships. Louie resides in Phoenix, Arizona area and has been sober from alcohol since July 11, 2012. That's amazing, Louie. I mean, you are amazing. Amazing. And I think we just have the perfect team for today, talking about sober relationship, where did the journey started and how did you get where you are today? But first of all, let me ask you before we dive deep on that, who is the real Louie?
So the question is, who is the real Louie?
Because we read all the bios and I did that, but I really want to know, who are you really?
Yeah, well, the reason why I'm chuckling of I'm laughing at that question is because I have an answer. I have an answer.
You have.
But the answer is, for me, in my experience, it's an answer that every day evolves. It doesn't change, but it evolves. So I know that we're going to get into that, but the reason why I want to say that really quickly is when I came into and went into 12-step recovery, I had a really strong belief and a really strong concept, Christina, of who I am and who I was. And I believed that with a capital T at that time. And as you mentioned, that I've been in 12-step recovery since 2012, and now it's 2023. And over these 11 years, that concept of who I am and who I was has changed and has evolved. So the things and the beliefs that I thought I had and was before, they've changed over time. So who is the real Louie Bischoff today? Well, what I can tell you is the life I live, and I'm not saying this in a cliche kind of manner. The life I live today, I love the life that I have today. I have strong relationships with people. I have deep, authentic relationships with people. And when I say that, I don't mean just a romantic relationship. You mentioned in my bio, and thank you for that great introduction and the information, is that I have two sons, and I do. They're now young men. They're now 18 and 21. Well, anyone in the world knows usually what young people are like, or they have their own, and they do. They have their own lives. They have their own, like, they're doing well. I say that as a proud parent that they're doing well. And when I say relationships, I'm saying that the woman that I was before, when I was actively drinking and actively in my addiction, I wasn't present in their lives. I was neglecting them, as you had mentioned. I had higher priorities, which were getting drunk and being involved with people I didn't need to be involved with. And today, the relationship I have with them is strong. It's deep. They answer my phone calls. They send me text messages back. They leave me little notes, or they'll send me a cute little heart emoji, and they'll just say, "I love you, Mom." It sounds small, but they're really large things with people who are that age. I talk to many of my peers, and that's a different experience than they have. I have strong relationships with my siblings, with my mother, with other workers that I work with, or other peers. So the person I am today is a person who feels comfortable in who she is, confident in who I am. I'm able to have boundaries. I'm able to communicate my wants and needs and desires. And I'm able to show up every day and be present in whatever that may look like, positive or negative. And today, and I know we're going to get into it, but I know it's just life, and that I don't have to try and escape. I don't have to try and escape life through alcohol or drugs or digging into my work or disappearing because it's too uncomfortable. So the real Louie today is enough. I'm not better than, I'm not worse than, I'm enough. And that connects me, for me, that connects me to all of humanity around the world, because I believe, that's just me, I believe that if I'm scared, then you're probably scared. If I'm happy, then you're probably happy, or whatever that looks like as a human emotion, and I can connect with that. It doesn't matter about age. It doesn't matter about gender. It doesn't matter about color. It doesn't matter about language. It doesn't matter about culture. I lived 6 years in China. I know, like you were saying, like, English is my third language. English is my first language, but I've learned other languages. I lived in Mexico for a little while, went to school, so I know what that feels like. I lived in China and learned Chinese. And look, I know what that feels like, and getting confused in your, what word do I need to say?
Yeah.
So, and that's also just, again, for me, another connection with other human beings and allowing myself to have that empathy. So I'm not sure if that was a little too long, but the short answer is that I know who I really am, and who you see and what you've read, that is who I am. And that's how I authentically show up each day.
I love your answer. It's beautiful because only from your answer I could keep you here for another day, for a whole day actually, because you said a lot of things that I would love to go into. Like, for example, you said that you have a strong relationship with others. But I'm assuming, not I'm assuming, I know that that implies having a strong relationship with yourself first, right? You were talking about you know your boundaries, okay? And that's good because you recognize your boundaries, you recognize others' boundaries. That's another topic we could talk hours and hours. So I absolutely loved your answer. And I would love, let's start from the beginning. Where did your journey start? When and how?
Well, Thank you for the compliments on what I just shared with you. I appreciate that.
Beautiful.
And you know, I think that you can see that too. And then also, as I mentioned, what you see is what you get. I am authentically me every place I go. So, you know, for me, and I'll answer your question, I used to live a life of lives, of
Mm.
lies.
Lies.
Um,
True.
I had a double life because I was in active addiction. So the way that I was here was not the way I was here, or the way I
Uh-huh.
was here was not right. So it was all just a smoke and mirrors, just all just not real, not true, just lie after lie after. And I'm not unique in that. I hear that in many people's stories, but I used to just have two very separate people, identities, lives full of lies and deceit and manipulation. So to answer your question, now I am one person, and I'm fully a person and integrated in that aspect. So where did my story start? You know, an aspect of, as I've learned, and a lot of people know this too, right, is family of origin. So I'm the oldest of three children. My two siblings, I have two brothers. My two siblings we're all close in age. And my parents, I grew up in a domestic violence household. My parents were they both had a business together, and they were building the business together. So
Mm.
I always saw my mom working, and I also always saw them having work as a very number one priority. And that's my family. And then work was a number two priority, work was a number three priority. So for me, as a child growing up with self-employed entrepreneur parents, the value in my household was work and work and work and work and work. And maybe number 100 value was family,
Mhm.
my perception. And as just a quick note for me, if you ask my kids, you know, where is the value of family, they'll know that I changed that dynamic. I changed that generational narrative so that the next generation, for my children, when they have their own children, it's an aspect of that family is important. So I grew up in a domestic violence household in the Phoenix, Arizona area in the United States. As I said, my parents were self-employed. They were building a business together, a retail business. My parents were, I was 15 years old when they got divorced. And the story in my head, Christina, that I believed that was told to me was that I wasn't enough.
Mm.
And when I say by that, and also in my understanding and the work I've done, is that all emotions in the family I grew up in were punished. So I don't mean just like negative emotions, like crying because you feel sad, like, why are you crying? I'll
Mhm.
give you something to cry about. So that would be more, I'll just say, negative side. But our family, and for me, my experience was that I was also punished for having positive
Mhm.
emotions or feelings. So maybe being 6 years old or 7 years old and coming home from school and having a gold star or 100 or A plus on, you know, a spelling test or something. And well, you think you're better than other people? You're not better than other people. So that
Mm.
aspect of not allowing, not learning any feelings or emotions.
Mhm.
And as I moved into adulthood or early adulthood, I didn't have that feeling or understanding about emotions. And so I moved into things and involved myself with people simply to have a feeling. Okay, if I'm involved with someone or someone's paying attention to me, that external validation,
Mhm.
someone is paying attention to me, even if it's a sexual attention, then I must have some worth.
Mhm.
I must have some value.
So.
And I didn't have boundaries, and I didn't know these things, and I didn't know wants and needs. And I met many people like myself, but just for my own story and my own self, learned fully codependent behavior and fully that aspect of, I don't know who I am. like, who do you want me to be? And that's who I'll be. You know, like,
Exactly.
oh, Christina, what's your favorite color? And you say, oh, my favorite color is green. And then I say, oh, my favorite color is green
Me
too.
too. Yeah. I've been there. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but
I
that's
do.
not me anymore. And then as
Yeah.
I went on through life, just having that continuous feeling of being
Yeah.
less than, not enough. Just kind of going forward, when I met my husband and we dated and then we got married, in our relationship, he's Chinese, I'm no longer married. I met him when I lived in Asia. I supported us.
Hmm.
I had the job. Remember, work is number one value. That's where
Exactly.
I was. And number two and number three. So it was really, really easy for me to work and really easy for me to support the family and really easy for me to be in that space,
Mm.
because being a mother or taking care of a home or cooking, and I'm not minimizing that, I'm just saying that was not a value to
Mm.
me, but that is today. And my alcoholism, it began at the when I saw the end of my marriage coming. So
Mm.
I did not drink alcoholically all my life. I did not drink alcoholically for a long time. I drank alcoholically at the end of my marriage into early divorce time. So about 2009 to 2012. Not it doesn't mean positive or negative, it's just information. That's just the way that my story. And then, as you mentioned in the introduction, after I got out of my marriage, I was in another relationship that was, of course,
A
you're
copy of it.
yeah, not healthy, because I wasn't healthy. Alcoholic, because I was alcoholic, you know, just a mess of a relationship. And as I got more healthy, then I began dating better, dating more intentionally, dating more, um, showing up a lot more strategically. And I
Mm.
don't mean just like, oh, only in my mind, but
Mhm.
just saying to myself, like, okay, how about this? Louie, can you do this? Do that? And then over time, that's what I did. I constructed the framework for sober relationship
I
blueprint.
love your t-shirt actually and your mugs and stuff like that. So wow, thank you so much for sharing everything what you shared so far, because you are saying really, really important things first of all. And then I'm gonna get into the sober relationship because I really would love to talk about that. Not being heard, seen, not being allowed to talk, right? As a child, this unconsciously affects us all, whether we are aware of it or not. And kudos to you that you recognize that and you um, tried and raised, educated your children. And I have a daughter differently. Saying, okay, I'm not going to repeat the same thing. When you get to the point where we get mature enough, when we get to the point that we are mature enough and we say, okay, that's enough. From here, Louis is Louis. From here, Christina is Christina. And, mm, then everything shifts. So let's just get there. Okay.
Yes, yes, I agree.
So it's really, really important for us to recognize that something's a little bit off. When was that for you when you said, okay, Louis, this is not working. Let's do something.
Yeah, so with
And
the
I'm going to stop you just, I'm asking you this because you had an addiction, right? And getting out of an addiction, it takes willpower and actually the willingness. First, you have to recognize it, which for an addict is very difficult because at, not at one point, but majority of the time, you're going to deny. You say, no, I'm not. Okay. And it's something within you that says, okay, that's enough. Can we go there?
yeah, that's a tough question, right? It's an easy question, but a tough question.
It's not
Uh,
easy because, I know people gambling. When you tell them, okay, yeah, yes, of course, I will not, of course, for the example, yes, I will change, I will do that, but, it's something coming from inside that pushes them to do the same thing all over and over again. I know alcoholic people in my family. I know how that look like when they drunk as hell, but I'm not drunk. I didn't drink a drop today, but they can't stand and they deny. Okay, and you know, it takes that something within you. What happens? What's that point within you when you say, okay, I'm going to stop this?
Yeah. Well, Christina, your question is a really good question. And if I were on the other side of watching this, I would want to know that too. Because in my experience, not everyone gets it.
No,
And
not.
and and I'll answer your question, but not everyone gets it. For me, 12-step recovery worked. Everyone's different.
Exactly.
And for me, and I'll come back to I will answer your question, but for me, like I do not take my sobriety or the life I have today for granted.
Mhm.
So even though I have more than 1 decade, more than 10 years of being sober and 12-step recovery, I still go to 3 to 5 meetings per week. Now, sometimes the meetings are AA, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Sometimes they're CODA meetings, Codependent Anonymous meetings. Sometimes they're SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts meetings.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're other meetings. Sometimes
Hmm.
they're food meetings,
Hmm.
whether it's like the Overeaters Anonymous. The reason why I'm saying that is because for me, I've understood and I've learned a lot about the neuroscience. I mean, that's not what my degree's in, but those neuro pathways, in my experience, my understanding, the neuro pathways are so deep
Yeah.
from all of that learning
Yeah.
that the neuro pathways for me, need to continue to learn new things or to be redirected.
Yeah. Correct.
And so what I always say is, like I say, okay, here's my timeline of my life. I was born in 1966 and now it's 2023. And so here's my timeline of my life. And then wait, not yet, here's my time in recovery.
Hmm.
So I do not believe that all of this other time can be erased with only
Thank you.
this much time.
Yeah.
And I'm just even going to make it even smaller because on day 1 of recovery is not the same as being on year number 10. So that's why I keep going and I don't take it for granted. Now, when did I know I was in trouble? When did I know? I remember exactly what you just said. Like I said earlier, the lying, the
Hmm.
cheating, the
Hmm.
deceit, the manipulation.
Yeah.
I was all of those things because I was an active addict. Like you said,
Hmm.
Louie, have you been drinking? No, I've not been drinking.
Me? No.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I can't stand up. I can't talk straight. I can't think. I shouldn't be driving, but I was driving all the time. I shouldn't have been doing so many things
Yeah.
that I was doing. Not,
But I can.
yeah, just that. And my experience for myself, and I know this by talking to other addicts, I know the consequences. I know if I'm drinking and I'm driving, I know I can have an accident. I know I can be arrested. I know I can be killed. I could kill. I know those things,
Yes.
but I'm still gonna do this.
Yeah.
So for me, also like, oh, I'm just gonna trick myself. I'm gonna just drink only beer instead of drinking wine, or I'm gonna
Hmm.
have wine and not drink vodka. And none of those things worked. And when did I get to the place where, and the point where enough was enough, is one day for me, it was just like, I don't know how I got here. I do know, like I was drinking from the time I woke up. I make my son's breakfast, I'd be drinking. I drive them to school, I'd be drinking. I drive to work, I'd be drinking. I'm drinking at work. I drive home drinking, pick them up from school drinking, take them to baseball practice drinking, having all day. That was my life. But as you asked me earlier, like your first question is, who's the real Louie? Well, I had a little bit of an opening here that's like said, that's not who you are. Because it wasn't. It just became who I was. And for me, I don't know why, but just that time, I just said to myself in July 2012, this is not who I am, and I need help.
Mm.
I can't do it alone. And I can't just tell myself, I'm not going to drink, because I tried that every day. So for me, that aspect of that surrender, I don't know what I'm doing, but this isn't who I am. I need to give up what I'm doing. I don't want to be an alcoholic, but I don't know how to not be.
How to not be.
I want to surrender, ask for help, reach out for help, and in my experience, be teachable and open for help. So that's when I discovered.
Thank you for sharing that. Was that, it's going to be a weird question, but was there any guilt or shame or anything when you went and asked for help?
I know that, yes, the question is a really good question. The many people, in my experience, it tends to be, and what I see is it tends to be more age-based and generational. So that when I see kids that are in their 20s that are in 12-step recovery, they don't have that idea about being in shame or being embarrassed at all. But if you have someone walk in who's in their 60s, because the story they grew up with as a child, right, was different. So to your question specifically about my life, when I went into Alcoholics Anonymous, I did not feel shame or embarrassment. I do know that that exists a lot. However, moving into the behavior aspects and the behavior changes and the behavior addictions along the lines of like the codependency or the sex and love addictions, or the moving through different things and memories and seeing patterns of my behavior with other people, especially with men and in sexual relationships. For me, that's where much more of the shame came, much more of the shameful feeling, the shameful belief. That's not who I am today. I don't believe shame is a helpful emotion. It's very culturally based, and I grew up, I went to Catholic school from 6th grade. I went to all girls Catholic high school. So a lot, I know now, like a lot of that of feeling as a full individual, as a full female, I'm just saying for myself, understanding about my own sexuality and my own ability to be a sexual person and have the boundaries and have the choices and learn those things. And when I work with other people, males and females, I work I work with them a lot along those lines. So for me specifically, Christina, that's where my shame and my embarrassment was mostly from those types of patterns and actions, not the alcohol.
Thank you so much. I truly love you and appreciate you for giving the answer. And the reason why I ask this is because I know there are many people, addicts, different type of addictions, right? You mentioned quite a few, and yes, they are real. They don't go and ask for help because what people is gonna think about me. I'm ashamed. I don't want to do that. Yet, they are somehow, okay, I'm ashamed. I know that I'm gambling. I know that I shouldn't. I know that I'm a drug addict. I know that I shouldn't. But I know that I'm not able to get out of it by myself. Yet, I'm not going to go to ask for help because what people think about. And when I wanted to go with my question, it was, to show other people that yes, it is possible, and yes, you are a strong woman. You did it. You just said, okay, that's enough. And that's the point when everything shifts, when you say, okay, that's enough. And shame here and there, because shame doesn't exist, in my opinion. Shame is a manipulation. It's created by society. Okay, that doesn't exist. Okay, and then you say, okay, it's my life. I'm going to take my life in my own hands, and you go and ask for help. Now, that's not to be ashamed of. It's a brave, big, bold move. Oh my kudos.
Thank you.
Let's go to the what happened to the that's recovery. How came up with the sober relationship blueprint? What happened there that determined you to work on your blueprint and how it looks like today? How was it at the beginning and how it looks like now?
Ooh, yeah,
Ooh.
I love being in that social relationship, sober relationship blueprint. So sober relationship blueprint, all one word, soberrelationshipblueprint.com. A lot you can find on there about what I've shared already. In this interview, there's a lot more depth that I'm able to provide, and I appreciate the opportunity. And there's more information on soberrelationshipblueprint.com.
We're gonna add everything. We're gonna add all your information in the comments below and also on the description. So guys, if you are in that space, please, after this interview, after this live today, just look out for Louie, okay?
Yes, please. And especially like you were saying a few minutes ago, is that you can't do it alone. And
Absolutely.
and I'll just say specifically, because I'm in the United States and I grew up as an American, that in the American culture, that it's very much part of American culture to be independent, to pull yourself up and figure it out yourself.
Yes, because you have to be strong, right?
Yeah.
Boys don't cry.
Right. And I know that's not just America. I know that. I'm just speaking because I'm American, but it's not true. It's not how humanity exists. It's not how people get better. And people get better and people exist because of other people and other relationships. And being able to be part of building something that can help other people to build relationships by asking for help and learning some steps along the way is the direction of why I created Sober Relationship Blueprint. Not because I think I'm so wonderful, but because
But you are.
Thank you. It's because I could see it happening for me. As you had mentioned several minutes ago, that my primary, I might talk about my relationships with my family or my kids or workers or friends. No, yes, but no, none of that would happen without a relationship with myself.
Yourself. That's the most important. That's number one.
Yeah, but
that's what I believe.
Right. I didn't know that. And as I got not just more sober, it wasn't that, but as I learned about my true self, as I became more mature, as I learned how to be an adult female in my at 45 years old, as I learned those things, I learned about myself, my true self, to know that I was enough. And through sober dating and through, I call it putting myself in my own scientific experiment, putting myself in the petri dish of science. And okay, let me try this. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, let me try this. Okay, that didn't work. Changing, it sounds silly, but it's really true. I'm going to change the formula in my experiment. Okay, I'm going to try this. Let me see what happens. So here's a silly example. And it's not silly, it was silly. So I go by Louie. Louie is my nickname. I go by Louie. I call myself Louie. My friends call me Louie. Everyone calls me Louie. That's how I go by. Okay, that makes sense. But my first name on my birth certificate is Lynn. So about a year and a half ago, I decided when I was on the dating apps, okay, I'm going to experiment. Let me see what happens.
With
I'm
Lynn.
going to put my name in, and I'm not going to be Louie. I'm going to be Lynn. Let me see what happens. Even Christina, even telling you this feels so uncomfortable in my mouth because I don't go by Lynn.
Because you're not used to it. It's not familiar.
Right, but it's also not who I am.
Yeah.
And you know, your question of like, who's the real Louie? Like, and I answer that because I know who I am, but I'm not Lynn. And so, but I said, okay, let me try this. And oh, I just felt so uncomfortable. Not because it's bad, not because it's negative. There's nothing bad that happened. Louie's just fun. That's all that it is. My middle name is Louise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a nickname. But it would felt so, but let me try. Let me see what happens. So when I started to do this with myself, and then other people started to see like what was happening with me and how I was choosing and getting better, getting more and more mature, then they said, can you help me?
Uh-huh. Good,
And
good.
so that's how it started. And the Sober Relationship Blueprint is 5 modules, and each letter of the word sober is an area for learning. So the S is for self-esteem.
Number
The
one.
O is for openness, being open to new things, not being like, this is how I always do it. Okay, that's not going to work. The B is for boundaries, my boundaries, respecting my own boundaries, physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, at work, having boundaries, romantic relationships, having boundaries. That's the B in sober. The E in sober is about evolving. And in the E, where I talk about evolving into other intimacies.
Mm-hmm.
I had shared with you that the intimacy I believed existed was only one kind of intimacy, an aspect about sexual intimacy. That's where I believed that that's what intimacy was. But I've learned that I can have spiritual intimacy with someone. I can have emotional intimacy with someone by being vulnerable. I can have intellectual intimacy. I can have physical intimacy, like holding hands or hugging, without having the sexual. So I evolve as a human to understand, to become more, not complex, but more open to who I am, to understand I can build intimacies. These are not about romantic relationships. For you and I right now, Christina, you and I are creating emotional intimacy. You're asking me questions and I'm being open and vulnerable.
You
Then that
are.
allows me to create an aspect about intimacy for myself with you. So even when like one of my clients that I've worked with, one of the things that he says is that he's an engineer. So everything about his world is literally zeros and ones. It's binary. So working with him it's not a challenge, but I mean, it is a challenge, but it's an aspect about working towards believing that there's not binary, that it's not black or white. That if you are in a relationship or dating someone, that there is an aspect about a gray area, right? That's the evolving. That's the E for sober. And then the R is readiness. The readiness of being ready to do different things, have a different life, have different friends, not be in your addiction, whatever that may look like for you. So the 5 modules of sober, self-esteem, openness, boundaries, evolving, and then readiness. So that's the framework around that, and that's the direction. And then each one of those modules has 4 pillars of learning. So
Wow.
it was a not long time, but it took a while to build out the construction and then create the information around that.
But I'm sure it's an awesome, because just listening and hearing you out about the sober self-esteem, and I think everything is, if it is to sum up everything, the whole sober relationship blueprint is more about self-awareness, yourself being very conscious. Is it true?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I believe that our self-awareness, being conscious, it is our biggest power. And when we start to be self-aware and conscious, then all of the others, the openness, the boundaries, and everything else evolving and readiness, it follows.
I
Really.
agree. That's
But
been my experience.
the most important was to be self-aware. And you were mentioning right at the beginning, saying that I'm living in the moment, living in the present. I am being present.
Yes.
Can we just go a little bit? Because what I'm seeing and experiencing is that many, many people are not present at all. We do things, right, on autopilot. We dress on autopilot, brush our teeth on autopilot, go to work and drive on autopilot. That's not self-awareness. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I love that question and the direction. In my experience, for myself, I have learned the benefits for myself of self-awareness and for myself being able to grow in that and become a more evolved person, a deeper person. I said, at the beginning, I love the life I have, not because I have $1 million in the bank, which I don't, not because I have a wonderful car, which I have a car, but I mean, not because of those outside things, but because of my inside, because of, I know, like you're saying, who I am, and that aspect about self-awareness. The many people, when I communicate with them or I'm working with them for Sober Relationship Blueprint, and I know that this is partly being human, but it's that aspect about unlearning and relearning. Is they begin to get into the future really quickly. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to marry this person, or I'm going to not marry this person, or, they have their crystal ball and it tells them the future, whatever that may look like. And, I work really hard on saying, like, you don't know, and just show up for yourself. When you go out on coffee date, just be present for you. That's all. That's all it is. And about my past and these things. I can't change the past. I can't change the future. I can only be here today and be present in what I can do. And whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing or an unhappy thing, for me, I mentioned, like, all of my feelings and emotions were punished and I wasn't able to learn them. But today, the woman I am, I have feelings. I'm happy, I'm sad, I feel confused, I feel sad, I feel disappointed. I can say those things today. I don't say, oh, it's okay. It's okay. Oh, it's okay, because it's not okay. I'm a real person. And if I do those things, it's not okay for me. Tell me. So just those things about being present, and that just works for me. I can't, comment on other people, but I think, a lot of all that is wrapped up around culture, society,
conditioning.
And what I always say, and I'll say this one last thing, is when I'm working with people, I say life is a documentary movie. It is not a Disney movie.
True.
Now, maybe you want to watch the Disney movie because that seems more fun and like, oh my gosh, look at those great colors and these wonderful females and these wonderful males or whatever. But life is a documentary movie. It's real. It's not the fantasy. And that's the most difficult thing for people to let go of. And when I'm working with them, is to let go of the fantasy and begin to be in that present and be able to say, when I'm in the present, I'm able to become more self-aware and to begin growing. So it's just wonderful to see that with my clients and be able to experience it with myself and be able to help other people out as well.
Oh, that's beautiful, Louie. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I would love to ask you before we close up today. I don't really like to say, can you please give an advice? I don't take advice, so I don't ask for advice. But I would love to ask you, do you have any message or something what you would love to share with the audience today?
Yeah, so I have on soberrelationshipblueprint.com, I have a little mini book that is 5 quick tips for a healthy, sober love relationship. So 5 quick tips for a healthy, sober love, because why wouldn't you want a healthy, sober love relationship?
Right.
And a few of those tips, so you, on soberrelationship.com, it's just a free download. It'll be emailed to you. And in there are things like looking for red flags, being able to say not base a relationship just on sexual actions, being able to learn how to give rejection. Like, this is not a fit. That's
Mm.
okay. I think you're a great person. That's just not a fit for me. Right. And being able to understand, like, if someone rejects me, that's not about me. It's just not a fit also. So some of the 5 quick tips, are, being present, being present where you are, like we were just talking about, being able to understand more about who I am as a person, that it's okay for me to have a boundary and say, like, this is not a fit.
Yeah.
And if someone has a boundary back to me, says it's not a fit, to not be like, what's wrong with me?
Exactly. Then we go there.
Right. Being able to be, like I said, not base the relationship just on sexual things, being able to learn more about yourself so that you can show up better for yourself. So those are just some of the tips that you'll find in the free download for the 5 quick tips on how to have a healthy, sober love relationship.
Oh, thank you so much, Louis. Guys, we're gonna put Louis' contact details, the website and everything in the comments below this live, okay? And I'm gonna add them also in the description. So if you feel like Louis is a good fit for you, if you feel like she's the one person who mm, you think that you can share, where you are at right now, if you need any help, okay, then please, guys, reach out to her. It was an absolute pleasure to have you today. I could keep you here for a long, long time. I think we have to repeat this one one time.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you very much, guys, for watching, being here. Thanks for all the love. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Calife. Thank you, guys. We love you. I love you all. I see you. Thank you once again, Louis, for being here. I'm going to see you guys next Tuesday for another episode of the Truth Runners Talk Show. And until then, I'm sending you lots of love and light as always. Bye for now.